All right, so our goal is to do the letter. That shouldn't be a problem. We should get through that fine. And then we could look at there are some situations I want to look at. For this paper, we've already done the dialogue. We did dialogue last week. We could look at the comprehension if we have time, but I think for most people, the comprehension isn't really an issue. So, all right, so this is 2023, paper 2, January 2023, paper 2, right? I just want to look at the instructions. Using the following outline as a guide, write a letter of no more than 130 to 150 words in Spanish. Use the tenses appropriate to the topic. You'll be penalized for disregarding instructions, blah, blah. So we can't just parrot off a letter that has nothing to do with the topic that you memorized, right? That wouldn't work. Your class is involved in a project to help families affected by a recent flood. Write the letter you sent to your Mexican friend telling him or her about this invitation. Be sure to include why your class has undertaken this project, what your class has done to help so far, other contributions you hope to get, how he or she can support this worthy cause. Anyone has written something like this before? All right, let us talk about some vocabulary, right? I would like you, if you didn't already, to jot down the scenario. But let's see, what's the word for flood? The first some pertinent vocabulary topic, right? Flood. Entonces, okay, here we go. Inundación, la inundación, right? So now, this is actually close to an English word, inundation, with a T, which means flood, right? This is not part of the question, but if we're talking about flood, how do you say, storm? Storm is tormenta. What about hurricane? Huracan, right? All right, what about fire? Fuego, right? And you can always add an adjective to this to make it more dramatic, like terrible or any other word you could think of that might fit there. All right, any other natural disaster we didn't say? What is earthquake? Terremoto, right? Okay, so storms, any of these storms, right? Tsunami. Tsunami seems unlikely. But okay, we're doing as does this other one, tornado. So tornado is tornado, but pronounced differently. Right? Tornado. And tsunami is similar to earthquake, like a shaking of the ocean. Maremoto. Right? And tornado is tornado. Okay, now let's look at what we have to do. The class is involved in a project to help families. How are we going to, what word do we use for project? What is Spanish for project? I'm sure it was used with you during term, during some term by a teacher. Right, proyecto, good. And what about, how would we convey the idea of involved in? We don't have to use that exact word, but what word do we know? What verb do we know that we could use for this? So involved in a project. We're not literally going to say involved. What can we say instead? What are some other ways to say it? The class has a project. The class started a project. In which case, what verbs do we use? What verbs could we use? We could use tener, right? And we could use for to start comenzar. Okay, other suggestions? Let's see. Right, empiezan, empezar, good. They began, yes. All right. All right. Why your class is undertaking this project? So what's the main reason you think we're going to undertake the project? Right, to ayudar. Good, to help. Right, so we want to help ayudar. Okay, what are some things we would do to help people who are affected by a flood? What? Okay, you could tell me in English if you think you can't say it in Spanish. Think about every time there's a flood, what do people do? Give them clothes. Okay, so what have we done? Okay, so we could say dar ropa, or we could say collectar, or we could say recollectar. Ropa. Right, and is it new clothes? No, it's gonna be used clothes, so usada. Right? Right, also comida, also agua. Comida, agua, and I think agua, bottled water is agua embotellada. Embotellado, because agua is actually masculine, right? All right, other contributions we hope to get. What are some other things people might need? So those are the basic things. What else could people lose? Okay, toiletries, artículos de aseo. There's another way to say it too, but I can't remember what it is right now. We'll get to it. Artículos de aseo, right? Toiletries. If there were a flood at your house, what would you lose from the bottom floor? Or if you're in a flat house, what would you lose? All right, money, right? Well, yeah, they may have lost important documents, but we can't return those to them. So they might need dinero, right? A fan, yes. Okay, so I was thinking of things like uniforms and perhaps textbooks, right? Articles for school. We could also include those, right? All right, I'm giving everybody a minute here. Whatever you didn't finish take down, you could take down, and then we're gonna get into the letter. If there's anything else anybody wants to ask about vocab, you can. Great. Let's get to the letter. Okay, so we're going to do the shell this time, right? So the beginning of the letter. How are we going to start this letter? Usually it tells us, the paper tells us, don't put in. What does it say not to put in? Don't write your real name and address, but include the date in Spanish and use the appropriate beginning and ending. So if we put in the date, so today's date is el 10. So today is jueves, el 10 de abril. 2025, right? And I think that probably if you wrote jueves, el 10th de abril, 2025, that would be okay too, right? Well, yeah, okay. So if you want to put in your address, you could put, I always say pick a Spanish name for where you live, right? Santa Maria or Sangre Grande or whatever. You can make one up. It could be the real, perhaps you live in a real a name that comes from Spanish. You could put that in any country if you want, right? Okay. So we're gonna start the letter. So we're gonna write today. I'll make the letter to somebody male because I always do it to somebody female. Right. So querido Juan. I pick a Spanish speaking name, a Spanish name, right? All right. So the shell of the letter, the beginning of the letter is generally hi, how are you? Sorry, I didn't write for so long or something to that effect, right? Or I have a lot to tell you. So I like to put in as the first thing we write, espero que estés bien, right? And I've said to you all over and over why this is. Because no matter what else you do for the letter, this way you have used subjunctive, which is not on the syllabus, but still counts to give you points in your letter, right? All right, so this E needs an accent. If one turns up later on, I'll copy and paste it in, but make sure you put one in, right? All right, so I hope that you are well. What else can we tell the person in Spanish? What other line can we put in here to flesh out the beginning? All right, well, I have a lot to tell you. We'll go with that one today. Tengo mucho que contarte, right? This works in any letter. And this is also good because you have used an object pronoun te and attached it to the end of the infinitive. So you've shown that you know some grammar, right? Tengo mucho que contarte. I have a lot to tell you. All right, so that is our possible beginning. All right, now the first thing they tell you is why your class is undertaking this project. So I guess in this opening paragraph, we need to explain that we've undertaken a project, right? So let's say that my class has started a project to help victims of a flood and you could say in our community, you could say in our country, you could say in our neighborhood. All right, so you take a try at telling me how you would say that. I'm gonna write the English. I have had started. You could say simply started if you don't want to use perfect tense. Perfect tense, right? A project to help victims of a flood in our neighborhood or near to our school. Right? You don't have to lock yourself down with a word that you may not remember how to translate. Just give the idea. Nearby. Or you could just stop at our community. All right, guys, take a try. You all know all the vocabulary for this. My class is mi clase. Comenzar is to start. Project is proyecto. To help is ayudar. Victims is víctimas. Sorry, víctimas. The second line, which second line? To help victims of a flood in our neighborhood. All right, no problem. So to help, you know what to help is? To help will be what word? I'm gonna erase the English and then type in the Spanish once we agree on what it is, right? Right, and then what is victims? Víctimas. What is of? De. What is a? Well, una, because flood is feminine, right? We know flood. And then I didn't tell you neighborhood. So, but what you, if you know a similar word, you could use that. If you know community, which you do, comunidad, right? But there's also vecindad. There's also barrio. There's also vecindario. Right. Now, since it's to help, you have to use the infinitive. So you have to use it with the R. Right? All right, so let's put it now. Mi clase, right, has started as ha comenzado. Wait, mi clase is third person, right? Right, so ha comenzado. But if you prefer and you don't want to use perfect tense, Comenzó with an accent on the O, right? Un proyecto. Right? To help, and this the to how we translate the help. Well, no, ayudar is to help, right? But I think we have to put in a para here in order to help, because the idea is in order to help, right? So para ayudar a las víctimas accent on the first I de una inundación of a flood in nuestra vecindad. All right, any questions? Okay. We should put in this A here, para ayudar a, right? Ayudar already means to help, that's true. Remember in Spanish, we have a personal a that comes in front of any people who come after the verb, right? Okay, so let me just center this. Okay, and then the next thing we will do is part 1. Why has your class undertaken the project, right? So you could think of some reasons once you're done writing down your sentence, whichever version of it. Why would your class help with this project? All right, guys, one correction, LA to L, so los víctimas, because some of the victims would have been masculine and feminine, so we would use the los form. If they were all women, it would be las. All right, so let's think. Why would we help a community in need? Perhaps 1, they have helped the school in the past. Perhaps 2, it's the right thing to do. It's part of our community. Perhaps people in the school were affected, right? Some students from the class were affected because we are kind. Yes, that's true. But we can't say that. Or could we? Well, yeah, I guess you could say that, but if you are, it's like you wouldn't normally pay yourself a compliment in a conversation, right? So if you do it, you have to acknowledge that um that's what you're doing. All right, so what are we gonna say here? We need to convey in a sentence that our class is helping because right, so nuestra clase, so now it's our class, up above it was my class, right? They are helping, so they are helping right now, so están ayudando. Porque, so if we want to say because they are kind, or because we are kind, so porque somos amables. This is optional piece to write, right? But if you want to make like a joke, because we are kind, of course. Maybe we could put that last. All right, so porque no. Muchos estudiantes de la escuela. All right, so let's think about what verb are we going to use next. Are we going to use ser? Are we going to use estar? They were victims of the flood. Will that change? It won't, right? So we will use ser and we will use preteritense. So fueron víctimas de la inundación, right? Okay, now if you want to put in we are kind, y somos amables, claro. Right? And then afterwards you can put a little laughing. So I would say that that piece is optional. Since this is a serious topic, we might not want to include it. But if we were going to include it, that's how we would do it. So let me take it off so I don't cause confusion. And you could also use del colegio here if you prefer that to escuela. Okay, so our class is helping because a lot of students from school were victims of the flood. We want to help them, but we've already used ayudar a lot, right? What about what your class has done to help so far? What has the class done so far? We've collected clothes. And toiletries. You want to take a try at formulating that sentence? All right, so up to now, as of now, so far, we could say hasta ahora, right? Now I give you colectar and recolectar. You could also use recoger. All right, so hemos recolectado ropa usada y artículos de aseo. All right, we need to say non-perishable food items and bottled water. So, right, so we could say, yeah, so still, estamos, oh, let's just conjugate it, recolectamos, right? Alimentos is food. Right? And then non-perishable is no perecedores. Y agua embotellado. Right? Right. Remember, agua is masculine. El agua, right? Okay, muchos alimentos. What else did you all do? I mean, we've had floods in the country. Either perhaps, unfortunately, you've been a victim of a flood, or perhaps you know someone who has, or in your community. What else do people do to aid those who are um, victims? Some people distribute meals, sandwiches, food. They go into the community after the water subsides and people are busy cleaning out and trying to rebuild, etc. So we could say that, we could say cada dia. So let's try and keep our ideas to things that we know how to say, right? Okay, so instead of gente, let's go some parents, unos padres de los niños de mi clase, right? Van a go to distribute comida y otras cosas, right? Necesarias. So all easy vocab. School books and uniforms. Great. All right, so we're at 78 here. All right. Other contributions we still hope to get. All right, we've already used yeah. to say still. So what's another way to say still? Starts with a T. Todavía, right? Okay, so todavía esperamos. All right, so if I change the subject at this point, right? So if I say we still hope that they might receive, then I would have to use subjunctive. Esperar takes the subjunctive, but we're not going to change the subject. We're going to just say to receive, right? Recibir. What do we want to receive? School books, and uniforms. Uniformes para los estudiantes y libros también para escuela. Do you know another way to say textbooks? Maybe libros de texto. All right. Looking at the paragraphing, I feel like what I should do in the exam is join this piece to the first paragraph and have this as its own paragraph, and then these last two pieces as their paragraph and then the closing. Cuadernos, sure. All right. In order to support this course, or in order to support this project, how do we say that? What is the verb for to support? In order to is para, right? What is to support? Apoyar, right? This project, este proyecto. You're talking to your friend now. So, what would you say to them? You can, what can I do? Now, how do y'all normally, if you're collecting donations, how do you go about that? Or you know what else we didn't talk about that I'll give you, we'll do vocab for after. If we were, instead of besides collecting things, if we had a fundraiser. You could tell your friend they could send money to the school, right? Not to you, because that might be a little shady. So put it in enviar dinero to send, right? Money a la escuela, a nuestra escuela. If you want, right? So si quieres. Or si deseas. If you want to say it's for a good cause, how would we say that? It's por una buena causa. You can mama guy your friend a little bit. You can tell them, you know, they're very generous. I think I would put that here. So say K, say accent on the E for I know, right? Eres, because it's a quality, a characteristics. Muy generoso. I'm gonna check the words now. All right, so we are at 114 words. So we need to close off the letter, right? Now, if for some reason you're over the word count, you know, you could always go back and take out the least grammatically stylistic sentence if you would like to, right? But I don't think being over the word count will hurt you so much. Here's my E with an accent, finally. What's it up here? All right, how are we gonna close the letter? And just as for all the other subjects, we have to keep track of the words, you know, count as you go, right? So you can see how many words you have left. Thoughts for closing the letter? It's could be my pronto. Okay, right. All right, sure. So this is our closing now, right? So we could say, greetings on to your family on my behalf, right? Saludos de mi parte. To familia, right? What was the suggestion? Sorry, let me look back at each. It's Escríbeme pronto, right? All right, so write me soon. Accent on the E, on the I, right? And we're closing now. Un fuerte abrazo, or just abrazo if you're over the word count and your name, right? I have an I accent somewhere here. Yes, I do, don't I? Right. Okay, any questions, any problems, any concerns? A little more vocabulary. How do we say we're having a fundraiser? We have a few options. We could literally say, collection or fund collection of money, right? Or we could say an event in order to collect money, right? So even if we don't know the noun, specific noun, we could always switch it to a noun that we do know plus like a phrase to describe it, right? So we know evento, for example, for event. So we could say evento para, you could say collector, right? But I'm going to use Recaudar dinero, right? So this is like fundraiser. We could also say recaudación de fondos. We could talk about, for more informally, so this might be like a barbecue or a cake sale. But if you're gonna just pass around an envelope in class, you could have a colecta de fondos. Right? So this is like a collection. You enter a competition, so this is still January 2023, right? That requires you to post on Instagram 2 things you would do to keep your community clean. Write the post. Well, what would you do to keep your community clean? And then how are you going to phrase that? Do you say I would, or do you say everyone should, or do you phrase it like a command? Or do you say it is necessary that everyone should? You could also say let us, right? Yeah, well, I didn't literally mean it's necessary that, right? So sorry, I phrased it badly, because that might take subjunctive. I really meant, are you trying to say anything? Never mind. There's no good place to go with this. Right. Let me just remind you of my favorite Spanish word, which is I, and then its friend K, right? Which translates to it's necessary that, basically, right? People should, we must, all those things. And then you put the infinitive, you don't have to worry about conjugating anything, right? And if you want to make it negative, you put no IK, right? Remember Mrs. Favorite word, right? All right. So what do we want to say? It's necessary that what? IK what? Okay, to clean the streets, cortile, cessped, cut the grass, mow the lawn, possibly. All right, what is clean the streets? All right, well, yeah, okay, so we could say hay que limpiar las calles, or yeah, las calles, I guess, right? We could say hay que, it's necessary to recycle, reciclar, right? And if you are confident with your commands, you could reciclar as the infinitive, so you could say recicle. And you could also say don't throw trash, no tirar, so no tire basura. Oops, there's a S. Al suelo. right? Or a las calles, right? Yes, great. Right? So you could either use an expression like IK, or you could also use se debe, right? Deber is should or must. Does deber, the infinitive. So you would say se debe, just like you would say IK. So one must limpiar las calles. One must reciclar. Right? Remember that you're not expected to write more than one sentence. So I really should have put an E in between here and made this common, right? Cool. All right, the next one. During a health crisis, members of the public are given 2 suggestions on how they can avoid getting sick. Write the suggestions that are placed in the newspaper. And this too could be IK or CDB. Okay, what would we say to somebody? To avoid getting sick, what must they do? All right, they have to take vitamins every day. They have to wash hands, right? Lavar los manos, las manos, even though it ends in an O is feminine, right? Right? Okay, good. Um, and the same grammatical construction like just now, right? Okay, so if you want to be fancy and you want to say to avoid getting sick, which you don't have to, but para evitar enfermarse, right? Um, no, sorry. This is clean. We want to say wash. Oh, okay. This will get complicated a little bit. All right, so lavar, the surface lavar. No, I showed you the simple way just now, right? It's I que lavar los manos, las manos, or I que the other things you said, tomar los vitaminas, las vitaminas, right? But let's just do the hard one for a little bit. So lavar se, because you're washing part of your body, so you have to put in a reflexive pronoun that is relevant, right? All right. So if it is that we are talking, we're using the usted form because we're talking to strangers. So we use the opposite verb ending. So we say lave, right? But then we have to put in the pronoun. So the usted takes say. So we put it at the end. We only right. So anyhow, lave say when we add in an extra syllable, we have to put an accent. Las manos. Right? Somebody said frequently. Y okay, so if you're telling somebody to take your vitamins, tome, because tomar, you take the opposite ending again for usted, las vitaminas. Right? Full stop. Anything else y'all want to know how to say? I don't think we need the last here. I'm gonna take out the last. Take vitamins, right? If you want to say social distance, you have to say the complete verb. So maintain social, maintain social distance will be mantener, or you could even probably use guardar to keep, right? La distancia social, right? Anything else you want to say? Well, if you think of anything, tell me. I'll give you half a minute here, right? Write the note that your neighbor leaves you instructing you of one thing you should and one thing you should not do while babysitting his or her child. Have you all ever seen the movie Gremlins? There have been robberies in your community. Write a notice that is placed on the community notice board advising residents on two things they should do to avoid being robbed. What a thing. What a world to live in. People. Yeah, okay. All right, come. What would the neighbor tell you about what to feed your child? Feed their child, sorry. Don't feed them after midnight. If y'all saw gremlins, then there were three rules. Oh, it's just one for feeding. Don't feed them after midnight. Don't get them wet. And I forget what the third one is. I would be a bad gremlin owner. But right, what are we gonna do? What should we do? And what should we not do? Don't turn your back on her child. Um, don't worry about anything. Don't cook dinner because you could feed them what they left. Oh, don't use the phone during work. Yes, that's a good one. Also, kind of suppose the person has an emergency. All right. Okay, so again, this is a command. So if we do the direct command, then we have to use subject, we have to use the opposite ending, right? The only time we don't, no, because we usually two form. So no usa. So we drop the S from the to form, or we go to the AL state of the present tense, and that's what we use, right? So no usa el teléfono. Oh, one accent, sorry. And what's the other thing? What could they do? No parties. Okay. All right, sure. What bedtime is 7 p.m. Okay, so mi hijo tiene que dormir, right? Has to sleep. No, has to sleep, has to go to bed. What's to go to bed? Acostar. Acostarse, he, right? A las 7. Anything else y'all want to know how to say? Right. You could say no I que. This is another option, right? No I que cocinar. Well, no, it's don't, you should on one thing, you should not do. So instead of no I que, maybe no tienes que. Or no debes que. No debes que might work best here, right? So if it's clearly should, use deber. No te debes. cocinar, right? Porque okay, just now, let me look back at this. I don't need to here because this is not reflexive. Right, no debes cocinar, porque you should eat pizza or eat la comida preparada. Right? You could use conditional tense. You could say deberías. Oh, yes, Psyche, that is correct. Up here, by no usa, this should be the opposite because it uses subjunctive. Yes, thank you for that. So this is no uses, el teléfono, right? All right. To avoid the command, I think you could say no IK, but no debes or debes. And you could also say no puedes. You cannot, right? Or you could say no se puede, one cannot. Right? So if you want to say one, you know, in English, sometimes we say one cannot cross the road without looking both ways, or one cannot, or one should not, then use say, make the verb reflexive, put in a say. All right, let's look back at it and make sure that there are no other errors in here. Right, I did write debes, but you could also use deberías. You could also use tener que. All right, what are we going to do to avoid being robbed? This paper seems to have a lot of the same kind of construction. Just now we said to avoid being sick. So para evitar. No. To avoid being robbed. How are we gonna get around being robbed? We could say los ladrones to avoid the thieves. Or even though it's being in English, because we just had an infinitive, it would be ser. So to avoid to be robbed, right? Robado. Right. Okay, sure. You could install security systems, right? You could lock your doors. Okay, so how do we say that? How do we say to lock? We could say close. So cerrar is the infinitive. Cierra tus puertas. Camina en grupos. No camine. No camines. Por la tarde. Don't walk at night. Afuera, por la tarde. Right? So don't walk outside. Por la noche, sorry, not la tarde. during the night. Okay, yes, secure, asegurar objetos de valor. Okay, so two other, so instalar, this is from Anisha, I think, thank you. Instalar sistemas de seguridad, right? Asegurar objetos de valor. All right. Take down what you need to. If I look at the timetable, I think we have 3 more classes before paper 2. Today is the 10th. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, because paper 2 is on the 5th, right? So we have 3 more classes before paper 2. What else would you all like to practice? Just keep going through paper 2 questions. Okay, so next week, dialogue on situations, and probably the week after, dialogue on situations. Okay, dialogue next week. It would be a good idea to look at the as many past papers as you can to find specific topics that you feel you can't write. And you might want to tell me, Mrs. all of them, but it's not all of them, right? So I'm going to send you the link to this website. Go through. We've done some, right? Look for the ones that we haven't done that you feel like you can't answer. You don't know the vocab or the situation is confusing. Right? Same for the latter. All right, so once you all are done with these, if you have no more questions, you all are free to log out, right? For those of you who might have orals next week, you can message me to set up a time for individual practice if you haven't already.